Hello dear viewers, here is a new video that I will please you on my channel Manhwa Compilation. I hope you like my story and how I told it to you. Events begin on a clear day at the city's train station, which is crowded with people before the holidays. An apparently harmless mosquito lands on the neck of an unsuspecting passerby. This mosquito willingly indulges in its meal and pierces the man's skin with its proboscis, along with the mosquito's saliva. A special virus enters the man's body, carried by the mosquito as its vector. From the mosquito bite on the man's neck, a mark forms, and his skin becomes covered in green spots. An unaware man moves ahead through the crowd of people since he needs to catch the train. We are starting to get to know the characters of the story, and we see Inao's grandfather along with his grandchildren. At this moment, the bitten man continues onwards, and his wound starts to itch and irritate him. It seems that the bite will have some consequences. Here is the mother of the main character, looking tired because she worries about the family and doesn't want to miss the train. This is her younger daughter, Sarah, who left college and listens to rocky music. She has an unstable character. This is the father of the main character, Steve, who always carries his unnecessary belongings and practically hasn't achieved anything in life, being a loser. Now we see the older sister of the main character, named Nika, studying in her third year at medical university. However, she got pregnant. And here's the main character of our events, named Menri. Since childhood, he's been afflicted with various illnesses, has a weak body, and has always been subject to mockery and humiliation. He looks at his family and thinks that his family is just a bunch of losers like him, and that this is his destiny. Menri believes that he won't succeed in life anymore because, due to his illnesses, he missed out on his studies and can't study normally at the university. We see that in front of the main character, there's a very beautiful and stylish girl whom Menri pays attention to. Suddenly, he sees a hand pointing towards the skirt of this pretty girl. We understand that this is the same man who was bitten by a mosquito and apparently wants to touch this girl inappropriately. This man touches the girl's skirt and what's beneath it. Based on this, it's more likely that he'll become some kind of pervert or maniac. This man quickly escapes, and the girl turns around and sees our main character. At first, thinking he was the one who touched her, she punches him in the face, calling him a pervert. Afterwards, she apologizes for her punch, saying she couldn't control her emotions. However, she still doesn't understand why he approached her. Our main character starts to explain that it wasn't him, but the girl cries and runs away, as she's very vulnerable. Menri is surprised that he was mistaken for a pervert and wasn't even given a chance to explain. Then we see that the man attacks the girl again, but this time, he manages to bite her on the neck, as the girl is weak and doesn't have time to avoid it. Immediately, the police respond to this and apprehend this man to take him to the police station for trial. After that, the officers question the girl about what happened. Now the girl says that this guy lightly bit her neck, but she's not sick and doesn't need hospitalization. Throughout this time, Menri was recording the event's details on his phone, and at some point, something occurs to him. That is, he saw something impossible in the recording. When the police took the arrested man to the police station, what he saw was that the man turned his head back as if he were a monster. Menri decides that it seemed that way because his head hurt, and he's tired so he wouldn't get much attention. We see that our characters have already boarded train number 47 and have put their belongings away. However, Inao's grandfather is frozen in a daze. Even though he's blind, he sometimes has special visions. This time he saw that all the passengers on this train would die in terrible torment, and that no one could prevent it. All the people sit in their seats, including the grandfather with his grandchildren and Henry's sister. In this carriage, the girl who was bitten on the neck by the strange man has also taken her seat. She has a bandage on her neck, oozing blood from the wound, and visible green spots that are spreading across her body. Menri sees this and has a bad feeling. The events shift to the police station, where the bitten man was taken. We see the corpse of a policeman on the floor, bitten by a mosquito. The man has taken on a strange appearance and a distinctive greenish tone in his eyes. Apparently, he's going to kill the second policeman. Meanwhile, at the train station that our heroes have just left on the train, chaos and a mosquito invasion begin to unfold. We see that these mosquitoes are becoming more and more numerous. Something is definitely going wrong here. Henry sits next to the bitten girl, happy because he hardly interacts with other girls, and it's nice to be in her company. Menri thinks she smells really nice, and her hair and eye color make him think embarrassing thoughts. Next, Henry's attention is drawn to a conversation happening nearby. We see a dialogue between the director and the actor, where the actor asks for payment, as he has a sick mother and needs treatment. However, the director refuses, citing that he knows a more useful use for the earned money. He stuffs a wad of money into the bra of a young colleague who follows him everywhere. The actor curses the director for this and yells at him. May he get sick just like his mother, and he hears him passing by his boyfriend with black hair and a pen in his hands. The guy puts his hand on the actor's shoulder and says he can kill this man for him. However, the actor escapes later and looks to the other side of the carriage. He is very surprised because he did not expect to see this man in his own carriage. At the table sat a charming young and sweet girl who thought our hero was a pervert and hit him. She was listening to music with headphones, wearing a skirt, cute stockings, and a blouse. He liked her a lot. The main character goes to the bathroom so that the girl doesn't see him and doesn't raise an outcry. Suddenly, he hears his mother talking to a man who speaks very softly. It is his mother who tells that man to wait because she is about to divorce Menri's father. Our main character does not understand how a biological mother can betray his father, and he realizes that all this time his mother cheated on him with another man. He remembers having seen this stranger before near his house. Meanwhile, the train arrives at the first station. After waiting a few minutes, the train conductor closes all the doors and continues with his business. However, we see a girl running after a moving train and shouting at it to stop. In the darkness, though, dozens of decayed and bloody hands crawl behind the girl. These hands drag the girl into darkness, not giving her a chance to escape. From the expression on the girl's face, we understand she's in wild horror, but she's already resigned to her fate and the fact that she'll die in a matter of seconds. The station lantern shines on the asphalt, and we only notice the bloodied hand of an unknown girl being dragged into darkness and void. Meanwhile, on the train, someone starts recording a video with a camera and goes live on the internet. This is a young woman who is a popular blogger and greets her followers. She's going to interview the first person who crossed her path. Suddenly, we see events unfolding behind this girl, namely a silhouette of a guy approaching her meeting. This silhouette turns out to be a monster that jumps onto a girl. The camera falls to the ground along with the girl and the monster. An infected guy takes the camera and looks into it. We see horrifying eyes filled with a desire to kill. Meanwhile, Menri's father is smoking on the train with a man, talking about his failed life. At that moment, his daughter enters the smoking room and asks for a lighter to smoke. The father shouts at her, as he didn't know his younger daughter had already started smoking. All of this is overheard by Neck's pregnant older daughter, who also joins her father. The girls fight and separate into different carriages so as not to see each other, and the father can't do anything in this situation. Next, we see the main character going to the car to get to his place. He notices a woman's skirt in the aisle, which catches his attention, so he wants to approach and take a look. Suddenly, his gaze falls on a terrible situation where a girl is devouring a man. The man's face resembles a lifeless doll, and we understand he's already dead. The girl notices Menrifuma and looks directly at him. The main character sees that a mobile phone is sticking out of the girl's head. Nonetheless, she keeps talking and announces that she will devour Henry. At that moment, she lunges at the main character and knocks him down. She bites his hand, and with great pleasure she tears off a small piece of flesh. The infected girl says that she's never tasted anything more delicious in her life, as the taste of Menri's body reminds her of a sweet melon, and she wants to taste another piece. At that moment, 2 train conductors appear behind the girl and distract her from her meal. The girl bounces back and goes to attack the conductors, as they prevented her from having dinner. The man whom the infected girl ate earlier begins to change and mutate. Apparently, from the bite, all people turn into peculiar monsters or zombies. This man gains weight right before their eyes and says he's very hungry and wants to bite someone. We see what's happening behind the train. That is, a crowd of monsters chasing the train. They are drawn to the sound of the train, and there are several hundred of them, all angry and crazed with hunger. A girl with a mobile phone in her skull continues walking through the train and finds a carriage with people. She says she really likes the smell of people, as it whets her appetite. She pounces on the first man she finds and knocks him down with delight. She tears off a piece of this young man and literally eats it. In a moment, this guy turns into the same monster, and we realize that this virus is transmitted through bites and saliva. The infected girl starts biting everyone in line and tasting a bit of each bitten person. Almost after a few seconds, they get infected with the monster and start doing the same thing as she does. Chaos and panic break out in the carriage. People start screaming and running in different directions. Behind the panicked people, that black-haired guy appears with a pen and says not to panic because he knows what to do. He takes a small knife out of the handle he had in his hands and gets ready to use it. These events are witnessed by the police officer, who, along with the police chief, is on a special mission. She immediately informs her chief, who was in the smoking room, that something strange is happening in the carriage and that all people are sick with rage and have gone crazy. At this moment, we see a tired Manhwa right where he was bitten. The virus enters his blood and his body. Manhwa himself experiences hallucinations and remembers what happened when he was a child, namely that no one was his friend, and all the children in school humiliated him due to his weakness. Manhwa, realizing that he will mutate due to the bite and become a monster, resigns to the fact that he will now die without doing anything useful for his miserable life. We are shown Manhwa's sister, and she comes out of the bathroom to sit without knowing what is happening in the car. She sees Manhwa unconscious on the floor and thinks he fainted as usual. Nikki rushes past the crowd without realizing what is happening, as he only thinks of helping his younger brother. She starts massaging Manhwa's heart so that he starts breathing again and regains consciousness. At this moment, we see that behind Nikki, a crowd of monsters has already formed, which will rush at them to eat in the next few seconds. Meanwhile, the police chief starts shooting at the monsters in the hope of saving the remaining people in their car. However, we see that the monsters don't die even from a shot to the neck, leading us to the conclusion that they are all in great danger until they understand how to kill them. Manhwa regains consciousness and opens his eyes, as his sister has revived him. The wound on Manhwa's arm hurts a lot, and he remembers it. He imagines that he will now turn into a monster or a zombie and will do horrible things, running towards people. In that moment, he sees that behind his sister, dozens of creatures are heading towards them, ready to tear her apart. Manhwa gets up and says that if he dies today, at least he will do something useful in his life. He doesn't have much to lose. Suddenly, a strange energy penetrates deeper into his body from his wound. He feels an unprecedented surge of strength, mental clarity, and incredible anger towards these creatures that will kill him. Manhwa thinks that everything happening around him seems slow to him. He realizes that his reaction is now at the edge of the impossible. He will destroy all these creatures, even at the cost of his life. He punches the monsters in the face with great force and speed. Then, Manhwa starts kicking with his feet, using various techniques he didn't know before. His sister is in a state of shock, not realizing where Manhwa got such skills, so much strength and speed. We see that the main character has adopted the stance of a professional martial artist. We see how Henry enjoyed watching martial arts TV shows as a child and was happy to memorize them. However, he couldn't replicate them later because he was too weak, and everyone told him he was just wasting his time. Apparently, due to a virus in his body and a mutation, he couldn't replicate the techniques he saw in his childhood. He continues repelling the attacks of the infected creatures and protecting his sister from them. It's worth noting that Manhwa does this with a particular fury, given that the virus gives him aggression. Realizing that the monsters are relentless, he takes his sister in his hands and charges through the crowd of monsters with her. He tells her to trust him, as he has never felt so much strength and self-confidence before. The main character leaps through the crowd of monsters with great agility while carrying his pregnant sister in his arms. We see that Manhwa isn't afraid of these creatures because he feels like one of them, jumping over their heads. The main character sets down his sister and tells her that they need to find their parents and sisters and save them as well. Manhwa cries and says goodbye to Nikki, believing they won't see each other again because he will soon either turn into a real monster or be killed. Before that happens, he runs through a crowd of enemies, realizing that the best thing he can do is to die with purpose and do something useful for his family. Manhwa leaps into an encounter with an unknown danger and hungry creatures, hoping the rest of his family is still alive. We are shown that at this moment, there are riots in the world, and the epidemic is growing increasingly. People on the streets of the city are in panic and don't understand what to do, as it was impossible to prepare for this. The police and the army are trying to contain the onslaught of these monsters and creatures. All of this is happening through mobile phones. Passengers on the train see this and realize that the disaster is happening all around the world, not just on the train. Manhwa's father reassures his mother and tells her everything will be fine. At this moment, their elder daughter, just rescued by Manhwa, appears behind them and heads toward them. She says something strange happened to Manhwa, and he went in a completely different direction to find them. Henry's mother says she will go look for Henry, and goes to dismantle the barricades people have built to keep the monsters out of the car. However, upon opening the door, she sees the horrifying face of a hungry infected person who asks her to open the door completely. People quickly close this door, and everyone realizes that behind it is a large crowd of creatures that will break through at the first opportunity. The mother realizes with horror that her weak son is most likely already dead, as he won't be able to fend for himself. Meanwhile, Manhwa's father sits near his garbage bag and wants to keep his belongings safe. From his facial expression, we can tell that there might be something really useful in this bag. Next, the events shift to Manhwa's younger sister, who is attacked by an infected man. A bullet shot from a police pistol hits the monster's head. The girl is rescued by a police officer, who says that they will now defend themselves against the monsters together. Ahead of them, we see a large crowd of panicked people trying to exit the car. Due to their foolishness and greed, they can't yield to each other, resulting in a stampede. Sister Manhwa realizes they are trapped. On one side, the exit is blocked by monsters, and on the other, by foolish people pressing against each other and not allowing anyone through. Suddenly, she notices the kitchen exit of the restaurant, which might become their salvation. The story shifts to a young girl's father, who is already bitten by a monster. Nevertheless, he continues protecting his daughter at the cost of his life. The main character witnesses this and makes a cruel decision in favor of the girl. He snatches her from her father's grasp, realizing that the next moment, he would turn into a monster. The transformation occurs, and shortly after, the girl's father becomes a monster, hungry to devour them both. Henry watches in horror, comprehending the tragedy. He decides to save the girl by any means and shield her from the horror unfolding on the train. Next, we encounter a beautiful unknown girl who was harassed by a man at the train station. She finds herself trapped by monsters and resigns to her fate as she's weak and incapable of fighting or running. Monstrous creatures surround her, saying they will now test her skin and undergarments. She mentally prepares to die, but suddenly her legs are lifted off the ground. Moments later, she realizes someone has picked her up. Our protagonist, with the girl on his shoulders, rescues the stranger from the clutches of the horrid creatures. He reassures her that he can get her out of this chaos, and she trusts him, realizing she won't survive on her own. In another corner of the car, a mother protects her son with a mop, swatting the monsters' heads. This brave act astonishes the girl, who notices the courage of the protagonist, ready to risk his life for others. Manhwa grabs all the men and leads them further into the car. At this moment, the police chief fires at the roof to divert the creature's attention. This tactic works, as the horde of monsters rushes toward the police chief, enabling our heroes to escape to safety. Suddenly, Manhwa stops, horrified by the sight of dismembered monster parts. A black-haired figure amidst the carnage catches his eye. The brutality and cold-bloodedness of the figure's actions shock even the monsters. Visible traces of mutation mark the face of the black-haired boy, revealing his impending transformation into a monster. In another corner of the car, the actor we saw earlier whispers something, appalled by what he's seen. He labels the black-haired boy a true incarnate. Despite the shock, the group decides to help him, as he wasn't bitten. The boy rises, and the growing band of young people moves away from the car, hoping to find a safer place. The black-haired boy remains motionless in the center of the car. Manhwa group approaches the tightly closed door of the next car and peers through the glass, seeing it filled with monsters. By now, they have devoured the remains of the slain and are scavenging from one another. Suddenly, the girl informs Manhwa of an idea to pass through the monsters unnoticed. They react to sound. Thus, by crawling silently, they might go unnoticed. The scene shifts to the restaurant's kitchen, where Sarah's group managed to sneak in and close the doors. Onlookers notice Sarah's youthful and slim figure, dancing carefree to music playing through her headphones. They are safe for now. Back to Menri's group, they continue crawling past the monsters, striving to breathe quietly and move cautiously. Menri follows a girl with a skirt, accidentally brushing his face against it. He detects the pleasant scents of vanilla and peaches. Shy, the girl refrains from saying anything, fearing the monsters might hear. The girl and Menri continue to crawl forward together. A mother carrying her son on her shoulders, using a mop to protect him, precedes them. In front of them, there's a soda can. Your ruthless son steps on this vial and clings to it, so all the monsters realize Menri company. Our main character shouts for everyone to run because if they don't hurry, they'll become a meal for these creatures. Menri says he will stop the monsters to buy time and allow others to escape. The girl is once again amazed by the main character's heroism and takes the girl with her to save her. The young people flee from this carriage, and the girl shouts to Henry not to die and catch up with them when he's done with the monsters. The girl cries because she thinks she might not see our main character again. Menri grabs a mop and tells the monsters to attack him because he needs to buy as much time as possible. The monsters attack him and easily knock his weapon out of his hands, pressing the hero against the wall. Literally the next second, the monster that apparently was a conductor before kills the main character and eats him. In the next moment, the thin blade of a knife that almost touches Menri's eye comes out of the monster's mouth. The rest of the monsters pounce on the one who just pierced its relative and start killing it. The calm and cold gaze of the dark-haired boy evaluates the whole situation, and he comes up with a plan. He grabs the tablecloth from the table and applies it, throwing it over a crowd of monsters to cover their heads. This deprives the monsters of sight, and now it's easy to deal with them. We understand that this is the same guy who dismembered the monsters in the previous carriage. The dark-haired boy asks Menri for help in dealing with the remains of the infected creatures. Menri is surprised by what he sees and takes out a knife that belongs to this guy. He gives the knife back to the boy and realizes that he was probably bitten too, but he manages to keep his sanity in the same way as himself. Menri asks what the two of them are going to do now. The boy replies that they are now going to kill every monster that looks their way. Before the two of them can react, other monsters appear, saying that the price of the trip is practicing their kidneys and fingers. Menri is armed with a fire extinguisher and fights the monsters. He hits them at great speed and says he would never have used a fire extinguisher instead of a weapon, and that the knife is clearly better. The dark-haired boy says he also prefers the knife as a weapon. The monsters try to take the extinguisher away from Menri, saying that it's being shoved up his ass. The boy realizes that there are too many monsters and it's time to flee from here. Both boys run away because they realize they have already bought enough time for their friends. We see a girl walking through an empty carriage and notices another survivor hiding in a corner. She looks at her more closely and asks if she needs help. At that moment, the woman opens her face and we see that she doesn't have half of her skin. She's a monster. The girl is horrified by what she sees and is overcome by complete terror. The monster screams that it's going to remove half of someone's face while they're alive. More monsters start arriving in the carriage. The coward's mother shields him with her body and gets ready to defend him again, at the cost of her safety. The girl covers the boy with her body and gets ready to take the hit on herself for the second time. She resigns herself to the fact that she's going to die now, but she's happy to save the boy. Suddenly, a plate hits the monster's head and falls to the ground. Menri jokes about the fact that he'd never thought before that he might need restaurant cutlery. The company sees that Menri is back, and they're very happy about it. However, the monsters keep coming, and the danger isn't over yet. The dark-haired boy rushes forward past our heroes. In a matter of seconds, he faces the creatures, but he does so with particular cruelty, and it seems the monsters are uncomfortable with him. Menri calls everyone behind him, and the company runs towards the next carriage where they'll be safe. We see that there are actually people in the next carriage who let our group of people in. Along with them, a dark-haired maniac comes as well. A girl with a phone camera falls in love with a handsome dark-haired man. Menri collapses onto the girl, as he's out of strength to stand. He feels her beautiful smell, feels her delicate silky skin. His hand reaches towards the girl's skirt, and we don't know what he's going to do with her. The people around start noticing Menri's strange behavior and express their concern. Menri whispers to the girl that she needs to get out of here because he's finding it hard to control himself. His body is also infected with a virus that affects him, and everyone has heard this. They start expelling them from a safe carriage. Menri says that if the girl doesn't leave him, they will both be thrown out. He says she needs to stay safe with the rescued baby. Menri starts pretending to mutate so they will be kicked out and the girl will stay inside the carriage. However, the girl takes his hand and says she doesn't believe him. He saved her life twice, and now she's attached to him. The main character feels the warmth of the girl's hands and her delicate skin, which calms him down a bit. However, our hero still decides not to endanger her and shouts to the whole carriage that if this girl doesn't move away from him now, he'll eat all the people. People around take the girl away, leaving Menri behind. The girl screams and cries, wanting to go with him. However, she realizes it would put her in danger, and she stays as the doors open. Menri sees the sight he was expecting. Monsters piling up in the corridor of the carriage. They eat other people. Come to die, they tell him they're going to play with him, and then they kill him. Menri touches his arm and sees that his time has come, as his body can't fight the virus. Our main character realizes he won't survive this time, and it's time to die. He knows that before dying, he saved several people and met the most beautiful girl in the world, so he can disappear calmly. We are shown that at this moment, Menri mother and older sister are talking to each other, and the mother asks Nikki to have an abortion. She says the child will be a burden to her, and that Nikki won't be able to succeed because of him. Nikki is surprised and realizes his mother is very cruel. Suddenly, Menri father shouts that the mobile phone communication started working well, and he could communicate with Sarah, the youngest daughter. Sarah says she's inside the restaurant's kitchen and is safe for now. Sarah's mother says that she and her father will do something to save her. Meanwhile, the monster reaches the kitchen door. We see it has the key to the door in its hands. An intelligent creature awkwardly inserts a key into the door and tries to unlock it. The kitchen door starts to open slowly. Suddenly, the mobile phone communication is cut off, and the conversation ends. Sarah's mother notices a glow near her and turns to look. There, in front of her, her husband stands with various armor, protection, and a helmet. All the people around are interested in this kind of equipment, as it increases the chances of survival. Everyone starts to take apart the equipment from her father, and offers a large amount of money for it. People understand it's better to pay all the money they have and survive, than to die. Menri father now receives as much money as he hadn't earned in his entire life, and today is his day of glory. Meanwhile, we see Menri already surrounded by monsters, and he has resigned himself to the fact that he will inevitably die. Blood fills his face and his eyes, his body doesn't obey. But he realizes something in front of him. There, far from the darkness, a monster with green eyes looks at him. It starts speaking and says that mom is already close. Menri starts crying out of pain and fear. The monster grabs Menri with its long arm and lifts him in the air. She wants to know how he'll taste since he's been bitten before. The creature smells Henry and says that after being bitten by a monster like her, he smells like cow dung. She throws him down with hatred because she thought she could eat well. Initially, our hero thought they'd let him die quietly and he could relax. However, he felt as if a ton of weight fell on his body. We see this creature starting to devour Menri and consume his whole body. We see the bloodied eye of the protagonist and understand it's the last thing he sees in his life. The kitchen door handle slowly lowers, without making a sound. A thin, rotten brush of green color opens the door itself. Dozens of people start to break simultaneously into the restaurant's kitchen to grab at least a piece of human flesh. People start screaming in terror, realizing they're cornered and nothing will help them. A shadow of large dimensions hangs over our characters, making us realize how enormous and terrible the problem awaiting them is. Menri father, who is a loser his whole life, takes the initiative for the first time. In his hands, he gives a bracelet he made to his wife, who, as you and I know, cheats on him and wants to divorce him. He cries and leaves with the hope of saving her daughter and son and doing something useful for the first time in her life. We see that along with him, 2 young boys who bought his armor also go. They want to find their loved ones and help each other survive in this chaos. Next, they show us the events taking place in the second safe car. There's the beautiful unknown woman and a little boy. They show the face of a man in this car, and it seems like he's chewing something in his mouth. He spits out a human finger that he probably didn't like. On the floor, a man with a bloody hand sits on his knees, and we realize the finger was bitten off his hand. People fight against the man who bit the finger, as they concluded he's infected. We see the cowardly son turning into the monster he always hid from behind his mother, and she continues protecting him. only this time from regular people, not monsters. The son starts transforming into a monster, and apparently in this context, the mother goes crazy and won't intervene in any way. She cries, whether due to madness, joy, disappointment, or some pride in her son as he's finally doing something, even if it's something terrible. We see the son biting his mother's neck and starting to eat her. People attack him immediately and finish him off. However, at that moment, true chaos reigns in the car that was safe just a couple of minutes ago. The feet of someone don't flee from this chaos, but on the contrary, walk toward it. This very leg stops the monster with a single movement and pushes it to the ground. We see that this is the foot of our black-haired friend, whose sanity was probably disturbed long before these events. All of this is captured on camera and streamed live by a girl. She is very pleased with the captured images, as she believes this will make her popular on the internet. Now we see what's happening with Menri's father, who, along with 2 boys, volunteered to help the survivors in the car and find their relatives. They are surrounded by a crowd of viral creatures that crave to profit from their entrails. As we see, the armor made by Menri's father works very well and prevents the monsters from biting their hands. Suddenly, we see the sword rising like a knight and ready to defeat its enemies with the most precise strikes. Now we see that it belongs to one of the volunteers who went after the protagonist's father, spinning like in a royal dance. This character strikes one enemy after another from a distance. When it's done, not a single monster is alive, because his sword found all those who wanted to profit from human flesh. We return again to the car where a black-haired maniac operates, unafraid of people or the dead. His indestructible and indifferent gaze only tells his mind when and where to strike the next blow. The monsters don't even have time to approach. As soon as they're sent to hell, the girl protected by the black-haired boy is behind him and feels that she's finally safe. She expresses words of gratitude and recognition for his strength and determination. In that moment, she feels intense pain on her face, and surprised by this pain, she feels even stronger. Terrified, she touches her face and realizes that everything is cut and bleeding heavily. The black-haired boy gestures for silence, and we understand that he's the one who injured the girl's face with a movement of his hand. He finishes what he started with this girl, and after that, a beautiful stranger who promised to protect the child rises. She tries to close her eyes so the baby doesn't see all this horror, which this time isn't caused by monsters, but only by a man. At that moment, the maniac finds the 2 hidden under the table, and from his facial expression, we realize that she will be the next one he kills. The maniac drags our beautiful friend by the hair, and we see how helpless and fragile she is for such an act. He lifts her up by the hair and asks her what her last words will be before she dies, because in an instant, with a blade strike, he will send her to the other world. However, the girl drags her protector back and begs the maniac not to kill them and to spare their lives. The black-haired maniac says it's even more interesting and is ready to play with all who remain alive in this car. The maniac invents a game in which he will place everyone facing each other and he'll spin his knife until it stops, indicating who he'll kill next. This is how it happens. The black hair tosses his spinning knife to the ground and watches with great intrigue to see whom fate will order to be deprived of life. The knife blade stops on another girl, who now realizes what's about to happen and begins to scream in horror. She wants to escape from the maniac, as she believes it's better to kill hungry monsters than a person suffering from a mental disorder. However, the girl can't escape, and the black-haired man does what he promised before the game started. He combs his hair near the mirror and enjoys how fun it is due to this game, and the fact that with each round, there will be fewer people. The deadly blade spins in its place again, and it tells him who to destroy next. It stops on a girl who at the beginning of our story was rescued by Henry. Her life will end before it truly begins. Menri's friend begins to beg the maniac not to touch the girl and tells him that he can do whatever he wants with her to save the child. The black-haired maniac accepts her offer and warns her that it will hurt a lot and that she will beg for mercy until he kills her. The black-haired boy cuts the girl's jacket with his deadly blade. The girl thinks to herself that she won't scream because she realizes that the more she screams, the more the maniac will enjoy it. Now they show us the events outside the train, and we see that the creatures, infected by thousands of people, are chasing the train. They are like ants climbing the pillars of a bridge, roads, and the train itself, hoping to taste at least a small piece of human flesh. We see our favorite girl again, but a couple of minutes later she is already exhausted and cut, as well as her skirt and skin. The girl cries and doesn't want her friend to die, protecting her at the cost of her own life. However, the girl reassures her and tells her that everything will be fine, and that protecting others is everyone's choice, and she has already done it. The maniac's hand rises above the girl and tightly squeezes the bloody blade, about to strike the delicate body of this innocent girl. In the next scene, we see Manhwa naked, and there are inscriptions on his body and the same thing. So we understand he doesn't understand where he is or what is happening to him. Next, the well-known girl appears, and Manhwa realizes he is in the afterlife, and his soul will soon find peace. The girl in red asks Manhwa to approach herself, as she wants to tell him something very important because she has been waiting for him for a long time. Manhwa is about to meet up with this girl, but behind him appears the old man, a being who has the gift of visiting the world of the dead and sometimes seeing the future. The old man sends Manhwa back to the world of the living, saying it's too early for the young man to stay in the world of the dead, as he has unfinished business. The maniac raises his hand over the innocent girl and is about to deliver his final blow, ending her torment and her life. Suddenly, the maniac sees a green ball approaching him, comprised of monsters. This group of creatures strikes and knocks him down with such force that the maniac loses his weapon and retreats. In front of him stands an enormous monster, formed by the bodies of dozens of absorbed creatures, with strength 10 times greater than normal. In the center of this monster is the main head, responsible for controlling the body. The maniac receives blow after blow and still isn't able to confront the monster, which has evolved several steps higher than him. The maniac receives another crushing blow and hits the body against the ceiling, causing a lot of damage. Because of this, the black-haired maniac becomes furious and declares he won't give up, as he wanted to have fun with the other survivors. He says he will now reach the body's control head and end this monster, which will be very amusing and exciting for him. He finds his deadly blade and starts swinging it masterfully, repelling the attacks of the great monster. The black-haired maniac starts pulling out one absorbed body after another, thus weakening the power and strength of this monster. At a certain point, the maniac jumps onto the monster's shoulders and strikes its back, specifically in the blind spots of the creature. We see on the maniac's face that, while being so furious, he himself begins to evolve to a new level, with his face covered in terrible veins and his eyes turning red. The maniac continues with his anger and fury, hitting the monster's back again and again, and in front of him, a small breach opens in the creature's body. The black-haired maniac believes that by opening the breach, he'll see who is truly controlling the monster's body. With his last bit of strength, he widens the breach to the correct size and is surprised by what he sees next. His gaze lands on the face of our main character, who all this time, much to our surprise, was inside this monster, controlling it. He opens his eyes, realizing how surprised the maniac is, and gets ready to launch retaliatory attacks. He grabs the maniac by the throat and lifts him above himself, showcasing how powerful he's become after mutating into something terrifying and incredible. Our friends see that Manhwa has returned, and are very pleased, since Manhwa managed to save them for the third time at the last second, for inexplicable reasons. Other monsters begin attacking the maniac and surround him, and no one else touches the survivors in this carriage. The maniac doesn't understand why this is happening, and also can't move his hands or feet, as if someone is controlling him. He realizes with horror that Manhwa mind is controlling him and all the other monsters. It's Manhwa who gives orders to the monsters to do whatever he wants. Unfortunately for our characters, the maniac finishes his stage of evolution in the next monster, and becomes an order of magnitude stronger than before. This frees him from Manhwa influence. We see that the maniac has now formed new limbs that he can control as if they were his blades. Manhwa won't give up and lose this man, so he gathers all his remaining strength into one and prepares to attack again. He orders the monsters to attack the maniac, but with the help of his new limbs, he successfully repels this attack. Manhwa becomes even angrier and more enraged, causing his hair on his head to become even longer. In a matter of seconds, his effort and Manhwa himself will transform into the new monster. He calms down with the idea that he doesn't want to harm anyone except the maniac, and he comes up with an idea of how he can be defeated. Manhwa provokes an attack from the maniac and swaps places with him, but all this is done so that his new limbs corrupt the window on the train. The black-haired maniac thinks that he's now going to win this fight and continue having fun with the girl, Menri, as victory in this battle is almost secured. We see that the fragments of the broken window in the train fall even on a girl, causing several monsters to enter the carriage. They escape at the girl's scream and pass through a broken train carriage window. However, they don't attack the humans because Menri absorbs them and multiplies his power with each body he receives. He evolves from the true lord of these creatures and manages to maintain his reason. It can be said that at this moment, he's almost a god of monsters. The maniac freezes in his place and realizes he won't be able to oppose him, as his power is almost limitless. He gets angry because Menri was honored with such divine power, not him. Menri directs hundreds of creatures and monsters towards the maniac, ordering them to destroy, which they do successfully. The girl watches with fear everything that's happening and can't believe her eyes, as just yesterday they were living a normal life, and today she's witnessing two demigods fighting among themselves, with one of them being Menri. Your new friend, the girl, holds the frying pan and begins to head towards Menri. She fears him, but at the same time she realizes that everything that just happened was done to protect good people, including herself. Menri sits almost powerless, and he can no longer control the monsters. He vaguely remembers who he was and what power he had. Probably this power still doesn't obey him and can only manifest itself in exceptional cases. The main character coughs up his own blood because his body can no longer bear such colossal burdens, and he remains barely conscious. The girl, with astonishment and a slight fear, approaches him, calls him, and asks him to recover. We see that Henry has gotten to his feet, but that doesn't mean he can't be feared now. He opens his eyes and sees in front of him the familiar silhouette of the girl he fell in love with at first sight. He notices her legs and her short skirt, as well as the stockings underneath, and within him, feelings start to emerge, the nature of which he can barely control. Drool starts to flow from his mouth because there's a monster inside him, and he really wants to taste this girl. Menri lunges at his new girlfriend, his eyes gleaming with fury, abandon, and unpredictability. The girl cries, but she won't run away because she believes that Menri will be able to control himself and she fully trusts fate. He lifts her strongly and presses her against himself. The girl feels the blood running down her neck and can't believe that Menri bit her, as it's most likely that she would eventually turn into a monster. We are shown that Menri bit his hand to avoid biting the girl and to quell the furious voice and the craving for flesh inside him. He turns to the girl, saying that he thought he would never see her again. The bright moonlight falls on Menri, tired and aching body, and he seems to be having difficulty obeying himself. He says that he has never seen anything more beautiful than this girl, and asks for her name. She apologizes for not introducing herself until now, as it wasn't the right moment to do so. The girl says her name is Victoria, and she is very glad to see him alive. Next, we are shown that Menri's mother is talking to her lover about what they will do after surviving. His mother expresses worry for her weak son, Menri, who probably is already dead. Nika overhears this conversation and also realizes that her mother is deceiving her father, who went to find their daughter and son and risked their lives for them. Meanwhile, the monsters envelop the train and prepare to derail it to take advantage of its contents. Meanwhile, Victoria tells Menri that she was able to protect the girl as requested. In reality, we see that the child is sleeping carelessly and feeling safe next to Menri and Torea. One could say that they could replace her with their deceased parents. Menri examines Victoria's clothes and skin, and sees that everything is torn and tattered. He realizes that the girl needs to find new clothes to feel comfortable. The main character looks at Victoria's bust and regrets not being able to help her earlier in facing the maniac. He realizes that as long as she's on the train, she won't be safe. Menri tells Victoria to try to get off the train so they can be safe, but she's not satisfied, as she wants to stay with him until the end. Menri realizes that it would be better for the child and the remaining survivors, but he still doesn't want to get off the train. Menri says that it's the only right choice they should make. The easier it is for him to save his parents and sisters. Victoria wakes up the baby and tells him that he should leave, and that soon the baby will be completely safe. Next, we see Menri's father and his new friends continuing to fight against the creatures in the hope of finding their relatives and children. We see a strange silhouette in front of them. It turns out that the twin sisters grew up together and mutated into some kind of creature, becoming twice as strong. Additionally, some infected individuals can now crawl on the ceiling and surround our characters. They believe they've fallen into a trap from which the living will not escape, and even one of their swords is useless. However, Manhwa Father shows unprecedented courage and enters an uneven battle with these monsters. The other guys are inspired by the fighting spirit of Manhwa Father and also start fighting and helping him. We see that Henry put on a new jacket that he found among the passengers' belongings, and now he feels much more comfortable, as the temperature on the train has dropped. Through Manhwa's shy expression, we realize that Victoria also found new clothes in which she probably looks even better. A short black denim skirt, delicate pink skin, and black stockings. All of this attracts Manhwa more strongly than ever. Her ample bust and a beautiful fitted brown blouse don't miss a chance to draw the main character's attention. Now, Victoria looks even cuter and more beautiful than before, and it turns out that the worst is already behind her. Manhwa draws attention to a girl who has been hiding under the table all this time, whispering something. She seems to have lost her mind due to the horrors she had seen earlier, like several other passengers. She embraces the hand of a maniac in hopes that it will move and occupy itself with something to film a live internet broadcast. Suddenly, I get in and shout that the monsters have entered, and everyone has to escape because they can't control them anymore. Everyone flees to another carriage, and Henry turns around to buy some time for his friends, now that he trusts his abilities. Manhwa grabs the maniac's blade to use as a weapon. We see him easily confronting the monsters with a deadly blade. His appearance might suggest that his behavior somewhat resembles that of a maniac, and for a good reason, as their minds merged at some point, and our main character adopted his experience and habits. Victoria notices that through the back car door, monsters are pouring in large quantities. She informs our main character. He attempts to shut the door and uses all the strength he has left. He declares that after everything they've been through, he won't allow them to be killed by the common stupid monsters. He forcefully slams the back door of the carriage, severing the monster's fingers. We can see that Victoria is concerned about Manhwa's condition and asks how she can help him. Manhwa mentions that his body can't withstand such colossal burdens, and it's incredibly challenging for him to contain the mutation every second while keeping his mind clear from the monster's thoughts within him. Suddenly, Manhwa's face turns happy, having seen something that might improve the situation. It's the train door key in the possession of a deceased train worker. Manhwa begins to take this key from the corpse's hand, but feels that something bad is about to happen. Right at that moment, a mutated monster of an even higher level than a maniac appears. A monster has acquired the form of a snake. This snake-like creature is several times larger than Manhwa, possesses great agility, and can attack and spit venom swiftly. Manhwa thinks that when this hellish and worst day of his life ends, he had no idea what could be worse than a maniac. But now the situation is even worse. Simultaneously, Manhwa is ready to fight this monster. Due to adopting the calmness of a maniac, he instructs others to flee and find refuge in a safe place. However, Victoria is paralyzed by fear and can't move as the monster swoops directly over her. Manhwa pushes Victoria aside, saving her from the monster's attack. She falls onto a shelf with her belongings, avoiding more severe injuries. In that moment, she sees a long snake-like body passing beside her. It's now attacking Henry and inflicting severe damage. Victoria realizes that this is her fault as she showed weakness and put them in danger, leaving Manhwa with no choice. The monster attempts to devour Manhwa and almost closes its huge teeth around him. However, our main character manages to stop the jaws. He locates the monster's spiky tongue in its mouth, grabs it with all his might, and forcefully tears it out completely to prevent it from devouring anyone else. Afterward, we witness Manhwa attacking the monster using the same skills as the maniac. It's now evident that he's assimilating the abilities of those he connects with during battle. Victoria believes that with each such battle, Manhwa becomes stronger. However, he also becomes increasingly dangerous to himself and others. It becomes more difficult for him to control himself. Manhwa momentarily subdues the monster and grabs his friends to lead them out of the train. He opens the train door with a discovered key, giving them a chance to escape. Victoria observes that they're passing through a field at this moment. She points out to everyone the large drifts where they can jump. The first two people, the actor and the grandmother who were taken from the carriage, jump from the train. They tumble into a pile of snow at high speed but survive. They no longer need to fear for their lives. Next, Victoria, along with the child, prepare to jump to the following train. Victoria realizes this might be the last time she sees Menri, knowing she loves him with the purest and truest love. Menri admits he also has feelings for her and hopes for more meetings. Victoria acknowledges that, despite being the most infernal day of her life, she's glad to have met him. Menri wishes his new girlfriend luck and hopes this won't be their last meeting. The girl jumps from the train and lands in a pile of snow. However, when she gets up, she sees something unexpected. A massive queue of monsters and zombies is stretching behind the train, eager to get on board. They're almost stopping the train. The girl becomes deeply concerned for her new boyfriend and their future. Menri closes the door through which he just let people out. He's ready to fight the monsters with all his might, now unrestricted. His intense gaze conveys confidence and determination. Nothing and no one will stop him now. The monster is attacking Menri, and a new battle is about to ensue. Through the passage of the carriage, a group of young people is observing the battle between Menri and the monster. Among them is also a younger sister, Sarah, who shields a coward between Menri and the monster. This battle is of incredible proportions, and the ordinary people can only watch. After another attack from the monster, Menri takes a favorable position and is already thinking of a plan to defeat this creature quickly. In this second, a cold sweat permeates Menri's body as he realizes a familiar face among the crowd. He sees that his own sister is among them, the one he has been searching for so long. Sarah shouts and says she recognized him even with a new hair color. However, at that moment, Menri gets distracted by his sister, and the monster delivers a crushing blow. Menri sustains significant damage from this attack and faints for a few seconds. Sarah says she will help her brother, as they shouldn't fight for their lives alone. Sarah rushes to aid her brother and grabs a stick to confront the monster. The monster opens its mouth and prepares to swallow the bothersome Menri to end the battle. Everyone is suspended in the air and starts spinning. It turns out the monsters have still altered the train's course, and part of it derails. Several carriages fall from the bridge along with the monsters. In that moment, in the carriage where Menri remained, everything flips over. We understand he opens his eyes and has survived despite the battle with Henry. This is problematic, as now he only craves revenge against the main character. We see how all the carriages swing from side to side. Finally, the train completely derails, and something terrible is about to happen. The train crashes into another train and eventually comes to a stop. All the passengers inside are tossed around, not comprehending what is happening. A woman dressed in a strict business suit calls a group of rescuers and orders them to proceed with the operation. Now we see the same cleanup group, probably heading directly to the stopped train. Then the focus shifts to our friends who had previously left the train. They find an abandoned city nearby where no one lives. We see that the streets are empty and there is not a single person. Victoria freezes in horror at the terrible sight before her. A mountain of corpses wrapped in black bags. She realizes they are likely in the territory of the base where this virus originated. Now we see a broken train, and people who are starting to recover. Henry regains consciousness and sees a helicopter flying above them. He shouts for help for himself and the rest of the people. However, the helicopter simply veers in another direction. Menri's sister realizes they are not the usual rescuers and won't assist them. She then notices Menri wounds and sees they have disappeared. She can't believe what she's seeing, but the wounds on her brother's body have healed within seconds. She's no longer facing her old brother, who used to be a weak coward. Now, she's facing his new version and starts unveiling the power that lies within him. In that moment, out of nowhere, the same monster appears, but in a more advanced stage of evolution than before. Our main character witnesses with horror as everyone starts fleeing from him. Menri doesn't want to fight him, as his powers have reached their limit. Suddenly, they encounter a barbed wire fence blocking their path, and they can't get through. The monster grabs the hero with its tentacles and pulls it towards itself, breaking through the fence. The girl does not know how to help her brothers. The monster's horrifying mouth attempts to trap Menri and swallow him whole. At that moment, stones thrown with special force start falling into the monster's mouth. The creature loosens its grip, and Menri falls to the ground. Menri realizes his powers and body are at their maximum capacity. He doesn't have much time if he continues fighting at the same pace. Suddenly, Menri looks to the other side from where the stones came, and he sees an old man who used to observe in the train carriages. Judging by his appearance, the old man, who is blind, possesses a hidden power that helps him fight against such monsters. Meanwhile, Menri father and his new friends exit the train without realizing where they are. Menri mother, her lover, and her eldest daughter also leave the train. They face a barrier guarded by soldiers in special uniforms. The lover and the mother tell them not to be afraid and to follow them. A little further ahead, a couple of women approach the fence. They show that one of them has been bitten and needs medical help. However, the soldiers open fire on them. The surviving passengers watch this unfold. The mother's lover approaches the fence where they are. The soldiers take something out of their jackets and show it to some kind of identification. They show it to the soldiers, and they welcome him as their leader. The lover of the mother tells him to go after him, and they will be safe. At this moment, between the old man and the creepy creature, a tough battle takes place in which the grandfather loses. He uses his ability to throw rocks with tremendous force. Meanwhile, he manages to weaken the monster and hurt it. Menri feels unwell and realizes he still can't engage in a fight. He remembers that during the battle with the maniac, he was at the peak of his abilities. He recalls that the weak point of such enormous creatures is their center, and that inside such monsters, there may be ordinary people. He shouts to his grandfather. The grandfather uses the ability of divine vision and sees through the monster, becoming convinced that there is a normal girl inside it. The grandfather gathers the remaining forces into a single unit and makes this his final strike. A bunch of energy rays pierce the monster's body and destroy it. Ravens fly over the monster's corpse and begin to eat the rotten flesh. Menri realizes that the ravens are eating the monster's corpse, and the main character realizes that this battle is not over. From the body of the just defeated monster, new bodies of attractive girls start to form. We see that several new pairs of monsters appear, surrounding our characters and about to attack. The most important of them approaches the grandfather and pulls out a sharp blade. She attacks the grandfather and cuts off his legs. Finding this amusing, the monster wants to play with someone else. Menri enters the battle and punches this monster in the face, knocking out her teeth. Based on the appearance of her grandfather, she will soon leave our world. The monster clearly didn't like the fact that Menri hit her, and she's going to finish him. Menri isn't ready for this attack, as she still hasn't regained her strength. Copies of this creature surround Menri, not giving anyone a chance to help him. Slowly and with great delight, the monsters start devouring Menri. Here ends the first part. Thanks for watching, and if you want to know what incredible events will happen next with our characters, with 1,000 likes and 100 comments under this video. Goodbye, everyone.